The Indigenous Curatorial Collective, Collectif des Commissionnaires Autochtones, ICCA, acknowledges that we are recording this podcast on Treaty 4 territory, traditional lands of the Nehiyawak, Anishinaabeg, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and the homeland of the Métis. We are honored to have guests from all across Turtle Island, also known as North America. The ICCA is committed to advancing Indigenous arts by advocating for Indigenous-led curatorial practices, fostering critical discourse, building equitable relationships, and creating opportunities for artists and curators through collaboration, education, and community-driven engagement.
Thank you for joining us today for another episode of Indigenous Narratives in Art, where we explore the vibrant world of Indigenous arts, curatorial practices, and critical discourse. Indigenous Narratives in Art is dedicated to bringing you insightful conversations and thought-provoking content that highlights and amplifies Indigenous perspectives in the arts. We're grateful to Sarah Whalen Len, aka Ink Stitcher, for our beautiful cover art. This podcast is made possible by the generous support of Digital Strategies Cultivate Grant from Canada Council for the Arts and the Listen, Hear Our Voices program from Library and Archives Canada. Together, you help us in our mission to amplify Indigenous voices. And of course, thank you for tuning in today. Now, let's engage in today's meaningful dialogue with this episode's special guest.
Welcome to the Indigenous Curatorials podcast, Indigenous Narratives in Art. I am met here today with Jason Berg of the Shushkitew Collective. He is a co-founder, and they are a publications partner of the Digital Publications Program of ICCA. And we are inviting you today to explore initiatives in advancing Indigenous self-determination and flourishing in the arts through gatherings guided by regional, cultural, and artistic knowledge keepers. So Jason and I will explore how gatherings foster knowledge, exchange, identify the needs of Indigenous artists and cultural professionals, and aim for vibrant, self-determined futures. We will also highlight the collective's research project, an online platform disseminating knowledge from these gatherings and research results contributing to Indigenous participation in arts and digital publications. Welcome, Jason. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Justine. It's like such an honor to reactivate community through the ICCA always. It's really awesome to have this ongoing relationship with that organization for, like I would say, over 15 years. So yeah, I'm Cree Métis from Saskatchewan, Miko Pisu Napio. So I received my spirit name from Elder Raymond Ballantyne from Pelican Arrows First Nations just north of Prince Albert, where he also gave me, through ceremony, my spirit colors, and he reconfirmed that I'm from the Wolf Clan. So I say all of these things because, you know, at the point I am as a mid-career artist approaching senior career, I've learned a few things, and I do think that it's important that settlers also understand our critical relationships beyond just the human. So that's why I'm starting to actually rediscuss or reintroduce the fact that I am from the Wolf Clan, because I think about our material choices and our relationships. So yeah, it's an opportunity for further discussion. So yeah, and I'm really excited to work with you on the podcast and the archive, you know, the archive. I just think ICCA's bibliography is a critical, important asset to our community. They say it's not art history until it's been written about. And I believe centering our voices and perspectives as Indigenous artists and academics is critically vital. So yeah, I'm really happy to contribute to that.
Likewise, yeah, thank you. We haven't really talked about the archive, and I'm excited to talk about that because it is kind of like if a tree is falling in the forest, and there's no one around to hear it, does it make a sound, right?
I think it does. I think it does. I'm guessing that most Indigenous people would be like, yeah, and then it starts to decompose, and then it becomes a home for some other animal, and you know, 1,000 or 1,000,000 years later, it becomes oil. So yeah, we know that tree fell and is part of
Yeah.
continuum, right? So
Yeah, but it's, we gotta make sure that our
yes,
art makes a
yes,
sound.
yes, it's so true. Yeah, I am all in support of amplifying the voices and individual choices in their spaces of self-sovereignty. So, yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. To give some context, the
Yeah,
Indigenous Curatorial Collective is building an archive, and it is really inspired by that bibliography that was founded in 2007. And when I
yeah.
joined the ICCA, it was gone, and they told me it could never be found again.
Yeah.
That was
And
not the
that
case, you
was
know.
heartbreaking for me because as a
Yeah.
past chair, I was the chair of the what was called the ACC,
Yes,
that was one of our biggest assets, I felt, you know, like
I
to
agree.
yeah, so I think that our critical perspectives held in one space as an archive is tremendous, and I'm so thankful that you recovered it all. So thank you.
No, thank you. It's because of artists and curators like yourself that have that organizational historical knowledge that I was able to know it even existed and to look for it.
Mhm.
So thank you. And that is really what inspired the archive, is recognizing that there is this history of Indigenous arts that well spans beyond, you know, truth and reconciliation or any of these like really, a lot of these movements that started in the 90s and the
Yes.
2000s, the 2010s, that there's been exhibitions since the 70s. And
Yes.
it would be really nice to have an
As much as we
archive,
can in one place.
yeah, that reflects all of it.
Yes. Available to our talent, like our artists, our curators, our academics. It's
100%.
expandable. It's expandable. Like that will inspire so many new directions. That
I
re
agree. And I hope
that
that
research tool. Yeah.
it also will like interconnect us as like you're part of 1,000,001 organizations. And so
Yes. And we're all
there's so
from
many
different
organizations.
nations too. Like I think about the critical importance of like Haudenosaunee positionality, for example, or Inuit, cosmology. When we start to collect all of these things, we can quickly like, oh, is the author Métis? That's a Métis perspective. So that supports
Mhm.
future nation building as well, which I think is amazing and important.
Yeah, it can also really like help cultures
Mhm.
start to establish like, how am I want to say that? It helps cultures really establish an identity in a lot of ways. Maybe not monolithically, but just to start to say there's some common themes that are happening here when we have Inuk artists talk about their work.
Yeah, 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 yeah. No, I think it's really important. Like it's like a traditional knowledge holding. So it's
100%.
super important. Yeah. I'm really grateful you're doing that.
I'm really grateful to be doing that. Now, our relationship to one another is through Shushkitew Collective
Yeah.
as an organization that supported the Indigenous Curatorial Collective's digital publications grant application. And I think you were on the board at the time. Um,
Originally,
now,
we initiated the bibliography. I was participating and heavily in support of that. Yeah, when you did the deep dive to find things, I then offered some new critical writing. So yeah,
yes, you did.
yeah,
Um, when we and so because of that relationship, we've had the partnership roundtable, and when we had talked, you did mention that you would love to see the bibliography and maybe the archives start to explore some of these critical art writings in native languages outside of like
yes,
English, French. Um,
absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
how do you feel that that supports self-determination in the arts for Indigenous peoples?
Oh, I feel it like in my being when we talk about this. Like one of the new pieces that I also offered was a piece that I wrote for Heather Igliorti, and that is on Indigenous abstractions, a vehicle for visioning, where I utilized my great-grandmother, and as I understand, my grandmother both spoke Cree and Michif. I know for a fact my great-grandmother did. Um, you know, that allowed me or validated in my being the opportunity to go back and look at Cree and activate Cree and utilize the language to then advance my critical writing. So when I think about Jolene Ricard and a time we spent together in the BAM Center of the Arts, she talked about how, you know, the artist's duty is to really reflect the deep philosophies of our people. So as a Cree Métis person, that's my duty, that's my role, to look at those ancestral contributions and then allow those to echo through my practice to then resituate my current nation and to project into the future our possibilities or potential. Like that's really how I work now as a result. So when I think about like our languages and welcoming these things back, I am guessing that the majority of urban Indigenous peoples are reconnecting to their languages, to their ceremonies, to even their ways of working day to day. Like I'm constantly gratefully learning important lessons from my fellow Indigenous senior artists and elders in community, including my mother, who's a senator for the Métis Nations of Ontario. You know what I mean? And my aunts and my uncles. You know, my uncle Jim, he served at the National Council on Indigenous Northern Affairs the majority of his life. And my other aunt, you know, ran the healthcare facility in Big River, Saskatchewan, where my mom was born and raised with her 8 siblings. So, you know, it's like, yeah, I think we all should. I mean, I'm interested from my own space in learning more about the culture, you know? And so,
Yeah.
like, I think about all of us, you know, I bet you, well, it's safe to say all of us are on our learning and healing journey. And so to give ourselves permission to make mistakes, you know what I mean? But still try to welcome in at least those deep philosophies in our practices is beneficial and connects us to the ancestral past and the land and our own nations, you know, so and our ancestors. So I think about that, and that's why I think, you know, when we do, and that I was speaking to the majority of the urban Indigenous community. When I think about people who are so fortunate to live in communities where their language is activated and utilized on a daily basis, so lucky. They're like portals of so much, you know what I mean? Which is theirs. I respect that as theirs, but you know what? Yes, as a Cree or a Michif speak, like no, I don't speak those things. Even being around it, you know, like if an exhibition occurred where there wasn't a stitch of English involved, I still believe in those syllabics, you know, that are abstractions that echo meaning and are extremely profound. And I do believe they do have impact on us
I agree.
psychologically, physically, you know, like those things are signaling. Those syllabics or those words in a different language, there are positionality, there are passion, there's an imbued intention by the artist if they bring forward even a single word for us. So yes, I think it's vitally important that we also animate our rights. You know, like when I go to Quebec, I'd love to hear more Cree. I'd love to hear more
Yes.
Haudenosaunee languages when I'm in Montreal, which is Hochelaga. the traditional territories of the Haudenosaunee. And I believe I believe it's also, I think there's 11 Cree Nations in Quebec as well. And a lot of Inuit people live there. And I also know Métis people like Dana Danger, who lives in Montreal and is not supported as a Métis person. You know what I mean? Because Quebec does not allow our Métis artists to apply for grants in Quebec. So yes,
Mm,
I think all of these things are powerful, profound visual signals and also very political. You know what I mean? It's like when you step into space and you see an Indigenous word or syllabics, it's like an act of reclamation in space.
yes,
You know?
absolutely. Like I
So
said, taking up that space
yeah,
unapologetically.
yes, here for it, all of it.
Agreed. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh. So much of what you said resonates so deeply. So like me, I'm also Métis Cree. I'm Swampy Cree on my father's side, but I am not status. I'm not community connected. I'm very much urban Indigenous.
yeah,
And my dad said that only minute moments of his life did he hear his mother speak Cree. And
yeah.
so we're very disconnected from it.
But you're not.
But
In
we're
a way, you're
not.
not. Like, I want to acknowledge, Justine, how many thousands of generations of ancestors stand behind you.
That's so lovely.
No, it's true. It's absolutely true. It's like when
I,
you think about those couple of generations that are settler, that are also in your blood, on that one side, there's thousands of generations that stand with you, that are championing you. You know what I mean? And when I hear like people like Crystal, damn people that might have that fourth generation connection to our genealogies as Métis people, like that is so problematic and hard because I think about, okay, so what? So what? There's a person that, like when we look at our genealogies as Métis people, they don't have that same practice in First Nations communities. If we go back even 5 generations back, that was an Indigenous woman who gave birth to another Indigenous woman, who gave birth to another Indigenous woman. These people probably survived a lot of like assimilation policies, like residential school and all of the traumas. And then that woman gave birth to another Indigenous woman who gave birth to another Indigenous woman, which would echo 5 generations in their community too. You know what I mean?
yeah, I was
So
just
like,
saying last week,
yeah,
why are we vilifying Indigenous women who did partner with settlers to protect their children from what they saw
yeah.
as,
It was,
danger?
yeah. My great grandmother at 14 had to run away from residential school because they were going to marry her off. At 14, they were going to marry her off to an old fat farmer. I have no problem with big people, but like, you know what I mean? That's how they described it to me. So she ran away and thankfully she survived. But like, then her daughter also had a moment in residential school. She fell down the stairs and she was hospitalized for 3 months. And then they took her out of that and they moved to Lake of the Woods, so like sadly, we all know what they were doing to our people. They were
Yeah,
beating the Indian out of the child. They wouldn't allow us to speak our own languages. They wouldn't allow us to even smudge or do ceremony. So, you know what? Like, so a couple of generations who were affected traumatically might have taken, like my grandmother, she was 16 when she married a 32-year-old farmer. You know what I mean? So it's like
mhm.
our women, some of our women, and then we also think about what it means to be Métis. Like, thankfully in Alberta, some of those people had land that they could have settlements on. Like most of in other parts of the country, like in Saskatchewan and Manitoba, we were road allowance people. And do you know what that is? So
No.
like I remember a talk by Candace Hopkins where she was speaking about the Métis people. Some of us didn't get scripts. Some of us were given small plots of land beside a highway or road, and we were given 1 year to clean that land. And sometimes, even after we had cleaned that land, they had taken the land away from us.
Wow.
So, like historically, we as Métis people, we didn't have anything to ground our communities in, except for in Alberta, which is wonderful, but those communities had a much better chance, you know what I mean, of
Hmm.
like holding on to things that are now held against us, which is blood quantum. So,
Yes.
like, and I'm really grateful those First Nations and some communities, were able to self-persevere. But we as Métis, like, I do believe that these are also things that should be discussed and talked about. Like, we didn't have some of the advantages, and we still don't. That
We still don't.
that ground our nation, that ground our communities, that ground our traditional knowledge, that ground those experiences. And that's why things like an archive is critically important. So,
Thank you. Well, I also, again, talking with you is so impactful, and I've just got like a million thoughts. I
yeah,
want to circle back to something about being urban Indigenous. So
yeah,
I have two points, and I'll try to make them really quick. We don't get a lot of those benefits. This is only one of my jobs. I work another job. I work at One Hoop. It's an Indigenous advisory organization, and it's on urban reserve. And if I was to, because I'm not status and I'm not Métis registered, if I was Métis registered, I wouldn't get the benefits of being status, which is why I'm dragging my heels, because you don't get the tax-free
Do you,
income by
so
being
is there the possibility
on
that you
land.
become First Nations?
There is a possibility, but I got a lot of bureaucratic hoops to jump through, including like legal blood tests and stuff.
Do you know what I think
So
about when I hear all of these things and these people that are going through all of that?
mm.
Immerse yourself in ceremony, talk to your ancestors, and ask them to lead you to safety.
Working at One Hoop because they're close
Yeah,
by. Also, working for Indigenous Curatorial Collective is
yeah,
really healing. But One Hoop allows me, like, they invite me to sweats and
good.
teach me ceremony.
Yeah,
I work with a lovely woman, Cree La Valley, and her father was a medicine man, and she teaches me, Cree words, and she teaches me traditions. And I
yeah,
mean, they're Plains Cree, I'm Swampy Cree. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of
yeah,
differences, but
yeah,
being immersed and held by the hand and taught is
yeah,
absolutely invaluable and healing, very healing. There's been a lot of non-Indigenous organizations I've worked for where I did not belong. I was the puzzle piece that didn't complete any picture. But that's me going off on a tangent. I also want to say I live in North Central in Regina, which is
mm,
iconically one of the worst neighborhoods. But we have
yeah.
the best school, the best school. It's called Seven Stones. My daughter one day was singing the national anthem. And I was listening to her and I was like, I know what you're singing, but you're getting the words. She was singing it in Cree.
I
That
love.
school is teaching Cree and teaching Indigenous language to young children. And she even won a humility award for, they have like 7 grandfather teachings where they give the kids who embodied those values awards. And so there is a lot of uh, restoring of culture and tradition and knowledge to our youth. And I'm so grateful for that installation of knowledge.
I love that. You know, it makes me think of a conversation that I just had during curriculum days this week at OCAD University with our faculty, including my dean, Stephen Foster, who's Indigenous as well. And we were talking about language. And I was like, we could learn language through song. Like, imagine in a semester,
Yes.
even if they learn 3 songs, like, like project one, you need to come to the table and recite what you've learned. And this is song one. Like,
Yeah,
that's an embodied knowledge. That becomes embodied experience. You know what I mean? Like, that came to
absolutely.
me while you were talking, by the way.
Well, when my kids were younger,
Yeah.
they were in speech therapy, and in hindsight, I wish I would have taught them sign language, but just to break through
Yeah.
this. But they say that singing is one
Yeah.
of the best ways to create those neurological pathways that support language development.
Yeah.
So I'm totally
So
in
I think
favor
it's
of let's
really,
sing some Cree songs.
yeah. And it's also like really healing. So healing.
Yeah, it
All
is.
that breath work, like the reverberations through your core being is so good for us too, especially as we get older. Like I think
Mhm.
children naturally are just fearless and they just sing, whenever their little heart's desire. But I found like I like actively have to I will sing a song, even though I sound like a terrible. But you know what? It's about the vibrations going through my
That's
being.
right.
It's about embodying those intentions that are imbued in the lyrics of a song. So yeah, like I'm all about it. Like I would definitely love to learn more language through song too.
I agree. There is, like, you're right, the vibrations, the humming, sing. There is something very healing about singing.
Yeah.
And there's no reason why we couldn't, I'm going to bring it back to archives. Like some of these songs that we're singing, like let's record them, let's write them down, let's put that audio into the archives and start so that not only are we singing it, we're also able to sit down and listen to it.
You know what else I just thought about too? Is an experience and thank you for bringing forward your family. I didn't realize you were a mom. That's awesome.
Oh, yes.
I think about when I taught dual credits at the Institute for the American Indian Arts in Santa Fe. I taught one of those dual credits in a high school, and I taught the other one at the university. And so a dual credit is really for our senior high school students, and they get a high school credit and they get a university credit. And so I think about that served as a feeder to get the high school artists into the Institute for the American Indian Arts. You know what I mean? It was
Mhm.
preparing them and really aligning them for a university future. I think about that too. Like we as academics across Turtle Island, they're hiring more and more and more of us. And so I
That's
think
right
about
there.
us as educators and like the percentile of our people going into post-secondary is still not super high. Like I think if we as Indigenous scholars who teach at universities were also offering dual credits in high school, that might, in those high schools where we have our Indigenous children, that might help. You know what I mean?
Agreed. Yeah, we got to start young.
Yeah.
There's, that's something that like Lori talked about in episode 1 is, how we can start engaging these youth early on. And I know and Thomas Benjo is somebody I work with at One Hoop. And one of his strategies is to always engage the youth, regardless of what we're doing. So,
Yeah.
putting Indigenous knowledge and opportunities to these career paths that are outside of what we see in the home is exactly what we need to be doing for our youth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I'd love to take a moment to talk to you about gatherings and the importance that they hold.
I think the ICCA, like what really solidified that organization is when we first met in Ottawa, and then we met in Winnipeg, and then we met in BC, in Vancouver, and then we met at the National Gallery, and then we met at OCAD University. Like, I do believe that was a decade. Like I just mentioned a decade of gatherings, and that really did solidify the momentum. And now you know that we have some powerhouses on our board. You know what I mean? Like I do believe that physically meeting where we have that opportunity to exchange is so rare. Like even once a year is not enough for us to reconnect, make new commitments, build new projects, reminisce as well, reconnect. Like all of these things are so vitally important. And I look forward to what's going to happen in Saskatchewan I believe later this fall, right?
Yes, in November.
Yeah, November 2025.
Yeah. At the last gathering, my first ICCA gathering that I attended was last October. And
Yeah.
there I beaded for the first time ever. And that was really important because I just never thought that, sometimes you don't feel like you have a right to some of these
Yeah.
traditional practices, or you don't feel like you're the right person to do it. So I would love to hear more thoughts from you on the importance of gathering.
Yeah, Winnipeg, that second gathering was a larger gathering and near the front end of the organization's initiation. And that was so critically important because, like it went right back to the very first Indigenous curator, which was Tom Hill, who was present and he gifted us a song, and um, Tom's impact traces through like, Indigenous and Northern Affairs collection and, Expo 67, like, and the Woodland Cultural Center. He had such incredible offerings and contributions. Like, but when I think about, yes, and that had major impact, like we're all present, Nadia Meyer, I remember Nadia Meyer just presenting her work. She's kind of like a new graduate, and these careers blew up. Like Michelle LaValle hadn't even, I think she was just about to curate her very first
Oh,
exhibition,
wow.
the AMPAVA, the Associations of Native Development for the Visual and Performing Arts. And that was just kind of going to be like during an art fair and kind of a pop-up, you know what I mean? She was really just initiating her curatorial career, and now she's at the National Gallery. Like I think these things, these meetings, these gatherings really do also, help us to talk through really important spaces that are also difficult, you know.
Yep.
We as community, you know, there was a settler who was a pretendian and probably raised $50 million in their academic career, which was redirected out of our community. And she was a very influential person who held a Ph.D. and built a huge new media laboratory. She spent all of that money in Winnipeg, So like, we as a community, like, we were like, okay, so internally, how are we going to serve this? How are we going to manage this? But those gatherings, it's like internally, we need to come together to not only build new projects and develop the future, it's also about like really thinking through the needs of our nations and our community to keep us safe, like there's so many reasons to connect. And usually we're all like locked behind computers, in our various spaces. And then I also think
Yeah.
about like what it means to be a future Indigenous leader, Like I might be a future Indigenous leader, but I think about all those beautiful, profound, skilled people out there, and it's really hard for two or three of us to work together. Why? Because the need is so great. You know what I mean? So like we think about like
100%.
super leaders like Liz Barron, for example, who's working on 5,000 different things. And Denise Bolduc is another beautiful touch point. It's like, yeah, they might be surrounded by settlers to animate their vision because like another Indigenous person is a leader in development themselves. You know what I mean? There's
Yeah.
so few of us that actually can and want to do that administrative work. You know what I mean? I think about that too. Like we're siloed in our individual spaces, and there's, the young ones who are coming up, they've got their own dreams. They want to become artists or writers or whatever, or curators. So they're on their fast track to leadership, which we want. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
so for us as mid-career Indigenous peoples, you know what I mean? It's kind of like, yeah, those emerging talent, they're on their way. They might not want to be mentored by us because they've got their own trajectory already. You know what I mean? And that's awesome. And that's another thing I think about for gathering, because it's like, yes, some of us are there's people out there doing a lot of work, and then for them to reconnect with their peers, to reestablish their footing, to talk through where they're at and where they want to go is critically important for so much movement. You know what I mean? So, yeah, these are some of the reflections I also have on the importance of gathering.
I love that you mentioned Liz. It is such an honor to work alongside of her. And
Yeah,
yeah, I really do learn a lot from her. And she is a very strong leader in the arts world.
yeah.
I'm so fortunate to have her as what I would consider a mentor. And you know what? I feel like her being my boss and us talking every day, I would call her a friend as well.
I would,
Um,
yeah, I feel the same way. I feel a lot of respect and love for Liz. Yeah.
So, but you're right. These Indigenous curators and artists, they're all almost at capacity. I mean, I would say that the normal average non-Indigenous person probably couldn't take on what they're taking on. And that's
No,
not me being rude or anything. Like,
no.
I just
The
think
need,
that,
the need is so great in our community. Our
yes,
population isn't as big as settler communities.
no,
I think
but it
we,
is growing. It is
yes,
growing.
thankfully, and like, we are seeing more people go to universities and colleges too, like in our communities. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that, yes, some of these universities have done cluster hires, and we're starting to see more Indigenous peoples create safe environments and pathways for, you know, the emerging talents. So, yeah, it's
I
great.
think too, like the youth that is coming up right now are probably one of the first generations in a long time that have grown up with their families, not taken into
Yes.
foster care, not taken into residential schools, not 60 scooped, and so we're learning to dream again as a collective community. And I think that
Yeah.
that's,
They do
you
say
know,
that our people are, the percentage of those in care are higher than they've ever been due
that's true
to
since COVID.
hospitalization, incarceration, also the problems through like child services. It's
Yeah.
it's still occurring, and they say the percentages are as high as or higher than ever. So,
I remember at the beginning of COVID,
yeah.
2020, and that was 5 years ago, that Indigenous people were taking up something like 83%. And I was somebody who was in foster care when I was younger, and
Yeah.
there is a lack of empathy and understanding towards Indigenous peoples and what they need. And yeah, I really hope that those things change. But I'm honored to see us all dream again, because as
Yes.
we dream and we get to do the jobs we want to do, we start finding joy again in our lives, we can mitigate those trauma and stop it. And I
Mm,
think that that's what's really going to keep our kids at home and out of care,
yeah.
is that opportunity and gathering, like you said, not to
Yeah.
bring it back full circle, but
One of the things that's
village.
been helpful for me too, like I remember maybe a decade ago, I was at Banff, at the Banff Center of the Arts, and I went on a hike, and I was kind of flailing as a person that didn't have a master's degree at the time and was still super hustling, like working construction, doing whatever I could to keep my life going and continue to make my art. I remember being on that mountaintop and like calling in my voice, like out loud, into the valleys, calling in my voice, like asking Creator and the ancestors to give me my voice. Like, I want my power. And you know what?
Mhm.
I felt like I got it. And
I
now, you
love
know, what
that.
I've been doing is I've been calling in my dreams. Like I've been claiming them. Like I stand with authority and I accept them and I walk into them. And I tell fellow faculty that, like we were in like curriculums days, and I tell my students that too. Like those
Mhm.
people that I mentor, I'm like, we can call in our power. There are people that have taken stuff from us. We don't even realize, you know, we can call our power back in, and our dreams are waiting for us too. And I think about some of the ancestral teachings that I've received from elders, and that's also like our ancestors will not interfere if we don't ask them to help. You know what I mean? So
Mm.
when we put down tobacco, we ask our ancestors directly for help because they won't interfere otherwise. You know what I mean? So it's like this I think is part of the dream. This is all part of process,
Yeah,
you know? So
I
anyway,
agree.
I
This is
offer
all
that to
part of
be helpful.
self-determination.
Yes. 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 I offer that just to be helpful. Yeah.
It is very helpful. And I feel like, yeah, I also feel like I'm coming into that power, where you're like, I see what I want and I'm unapologetically going to go for it.
Yes. Yes. And that means
Love
to
all that.
our family members that don't understand what we're doing, that's okay. You don't
It's
have to
okay.
understand. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
these are this is what I was called here to do, you know? So
100%.
yeah, yeah.
I think that is like the perfect note to end our episode on, if I'm being honest, because that was just beautiful and such a really powerful note. And I know I'm going to be thinking about calling my power for a while. It really resonated with me, and I got a little teary-eyed, if I'm being honest.
Good, 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 good.
Yeah. Yeah, we really talked about more than I had even hoped. And so I'm going to finish off with one last question then. And
Sure.
it would be, what advice would you give to those seeking to create projects or even collectives that are rooted in Indigenous self-determination?
I think about Tap Waywen, the truth, be Matsawen, the good life, you know, like acting in good ways. I think about safety and really healthy mentorship. And I also think about being transgressive and really listening to one's individual direction through, you know, like their own intuitive direction forward. You know, like Norval Morrisseau was really criticized for telling the stories he told by the Medewan Lodge, you know,
Mhm.
but he still had the courage and did what he did.
Thank you so much for meeting with me, Jason. It was great to talk about self-determination and how we can really amplify Indigenous voices and narratives in how we approach art and how we gather. And yeah, I want to thank you for spending your time with us today.
Pleasure, 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 pleasure.
Well, I look forward to our publications roundtable, which I hope will be episode 4 of our podcast.
Great.
Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you, Marcy. Have a great day. Have a great weekend.
You too, Jason.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Indigenous Narratives in Art. This concludes our episode. We hope you enjoyed our conversation and gained new insights into the vibrant world of Indigenous arts and culture. This podcast is made possible by the generous support of Digital Strategies Cultivate Grant from Canada Council for the Arts and the Listen, Hear Our Voices program from Library and Archives Canada. Thank you, both of you, again, for helping us amplify Indigenous voices. You can amplify your own artistic narratives by contributing your voice to our publications platform and our archive. Visit our website at icca.art to learn more about our programs such as annual gatherings, delegations initiative, and publications.
and projects like Community Cares, our curatorial mentorship program, Activations of Solidarity, and more. Don't forget to like and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Vimeo to stay updated on our latest episodes and initiatives. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to sharing more with you next time.